bit more like this. And then we have a downtrend where the overall direction of the market is downwards and the actual movement of the market might be a little bit more like this. And then we have a sideways trend, which is also called a ranging market. And that's where the price tends to be bounded above and below by consistent levels of support and resistance, so that the overall direction is sideways. And then the definitions that we finished off with last time for an uptrend and a downtrend. An uptrend is when the market makes successive higher highs, which we could also describe as higher peaks, and higher lows, which we could also describe as higher troughs. And then a downtrend is when the market makes successive lower highs or lower peaks and lower lows or lower troughs in that typical oscillating movement that a market tends to make. So let's now look at some charts to illustrate this. And here is that same chart cropped to look solely at the two areas we are interested in, and I've annotated the downtrend and uptrend parts there. So let's look first of all at the downtrend. I'm going to mark on the troughs. We have one here and here, and another one here and here, and let's down here and here as well. And we can see that each successive trough is lower than the last. So let's now mark on the peaks. And there we go. And we have successively lower peaks. If we look at the peak here, it is lower than the one before it there, and so on. So we've got lower lows and lower highs. So let's now do the same with the uptrend. First of all, the troughs. So we have one here and here and here, and here, here and here, and there as well. And we see that each successive trough is higher than the last. And now the peaks. And we have successively higher peaks. So each peak is higher than the one that comes before it. So those defining characteristics are in place. Higher highs and lower lows coming in succession, indicating an uptrend. Now we come to an important skill to have in your toolkit as a budding technical analyst, which is how to draw trend lines. Drawing a trend line can help you identify and confirm trends, but it can also help you spot when a trend is beginning to break down. So let's look at some general guidelines for drawing trend lines. In order to draw a trend line for an uptrend, you're aiming to connect major troughs in the price. So we said for an uptrend, you're looking at higher highs and higher lows. We're going to be concentrating on the lows when it comes to drawing the trend line, looking at those troughs. We're trying to identify supports coming in at increasingly higher levels. And then in order to draw a trend line for a downtrend, we're aiming to connect major peaks in the price. So a downtrend, lower highs, lower lows. We're going to be looking at those highs, connecting the peaks, and we're looking for resistance to be coming in at lower levels successively. Here we have an example of a trend line drawn for an uptrend. We can see that we have a number of troughs, and we've drawn a line through those points to give us our trend line. Now, you don't actually need this many. You can draw a trend line just looking at two troughs, put the line through it, and then a third would be used to confirm. And here we have an example of a trend line drawn for a downtrend. And you can see how the line goes through the peaks of the market. And we've got lots and lots here. Once again, you only really need two to construct the line, say, and then a third to confirm what is going on. But the more you do have, the better, because then the stronger the indication of the trend. Trading 212's web app comes with a dedicated function for drawing trend lines. So let's now take a look at how to use this. Here we are in Trading 212's web app, looking at that same daily candlestick chart of oil that we looked at earlier. And to get to the trend line tool, we go up to here where we've got a horizontal line currently selected. I'll just drop down this menu here by clicking on it, and I'll select the trend line tool. So for the downtrend on the left, we'd be looking to join the peaks. Now, this isn't a precise science. In fact, you could say it's more of an art than a science. But if I was to start with these first few peaks up here, and then draw my line, through here, from this I might be able to infer some things about what's going on as the trend develops. I might infer that the trend was picking up pace as it went deeper, lower beneath my trend line at this point here, and then maybe started to run out of steam as it came back towards the trend line and just peaked above it here. And then you might decide, once it broke well above the trend line here, that the trend was over. And obviously with hindsight, it was. And then for the uptrend, let's draw another line. This time we're looking to the trough. So we would pick some of these troughs, draw a line through it. So you might draw something like this. And looking at that, you might decide that at this point where it's broken well below the trend line, you might decide that the trend was over. And if we scroll on, of course, you'd see that you'd be right in thinking that. And with these lines, if we decide that we want to change them, we can just click on them and then move them around by grabbing either of these points at the ends there. Just to go over some further guidelines then for drawing trend lines, some of which we've already touched upon. Ultimately, the market is your guide. So the market has to really dictate what the line does, not the other way around. So if your line doesn't fit what the market has done, it's unlikely to be valid anymore. When we're drawing a trend line, when we're constructing it, we only need to join two peaks for a downtrend or two troughs for an uptrend. You only need two to construct the line. Then you will need a third to confirm that it is a valid trend line. But then the more times that a line is tested and holds, then the stronger your conviction can be about that trend line. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video on trends and how to draw trend lines.